Imagine being born into the world without a name, no family, no warmth, no sense of safety, just a number 11. She doesn't grow up hearing lullabies or being told everything will be okay. She grows up under fluorescent lights, surrounded by strangers who don't see a child. They see potential, power, usefulness. And that's where Eleven's story really begins in Stranger Things. Because once you strip away the shaved head and the superpowers, it becomes very clear that this story isn't about strength. It's a story about a child who was never allowed to be one. Most childhoods are built from ordinary moments, falling down and being told to get back up, making mistakes and learning that the world won't end. 11 didn't get those lessons. Her childhood happens inside a lab, cold rooms, white walls, men in lab coats who are always watching her like she's part of a long term experiment. And you know what? She actually is. Instead of learning how to play, she learns how to focus, how to move things. Instead of learning how to speak freely, she learns how to follow instructions. One of the most unsettling images in the entire series is the sensory deprivation tank. A child floating alone in darkness, forced to enter her own mind again and again because adults decided that it was very useful. It's framed as training, but when you really think about it, it's isolation disguised as science. And the worst part of all is that 11 doesn't question it. Because when this is all you've ever known, you don't ask whether it's cruel. You just assume that this is what life looks like. From the outside, 11 looks very powerful. She can do awesome things like move things with her mind. She can access other dimensions and defeat creatures no one else can. But every time she uses her powers, her body pays the price. Nosebleeds, collapse, complete exhaustion. These aren't cinematic details, they're warnings. Her abilities don't empower her, they drain her. And no one ever stops to ask whether she wants to use them. They just say, "We need you." Which is a very terrifying thing to say to a child who has never been loved without conditions. And when 11 kills the Demogorgon in the season 1, it's treated like a heroic sacrifice. But look at it more closely. This is a child with no real understanding of death or loss, choosing to disappear because she believes that's what she is meant to do. She doesn't expect to survive, she expects to be used up. That's not bravery, that's conditioning. She's been taught that her value comes from what she can give, even if it costs her everything. In season 2, 11 is hidden away for her own safety. At least that's what the adults call it. But for 11, isolation doesn't feel protective. It feels familiar. She's confined again, hidden, separated from the people she cares about, watching the world through cracks and the windows. She's not allowed to leave her home. She's told to wait, to trust, to believe that this is for her own good. For someone who grew up in captivity, being hidden away doesn't feel like safety. It feels like punishment, just with better furniture. And when she eventually leaves, it isn't actually rebellion, it's desperation. At some point, every child learns they're allowed to be scared. But 11, she never learned that. In her world, fear meant failure, hesitation meant punishment, and struggle meant disappointment. So she always adapts. She swallows fear before it can be seen, pushes it down, carries it, but quietly. Even later, when she's surrounded by her friends, 11 doesn't express fear very easily because deep down, she still believes fear makes her disposable. The first adult figure in Eleven's life claims to love her and also controls her every move. But that creates a dangerous emotional blueprint. When love and control arrive together, your brain stops knowing the difference. So later, when 11 forms relationships, she doesn't just want connection, she wants reassurance. That too, constant reassurance. When something goes wrong, she doesn't get angry, she gets quiet. She withdraws, assumes that she is the problem. That's not immaturity, that's survival behavior. The season 3 introduces a terrifying idea for 11. What happens when she can't save anyone? After the mall fight, she loses her powers, and for the first time, she isn't the solution anymore. For someone whose entire identity has been built around usefulness, this isn't freedom, it's an identity crisis. She's left asking a question she was never prepared for. Who am I if I don't have the powers? Who am I if I'm not needed? Season 4 might be the cruelest chapter of all, because this time the danger isn't supernatural, it's human. 11 is bullied, mocked, publicly humiliated, and she doesn't know how to fight back. Without her powers, she's just a traumatized kid trying to survive a normal world that isn't kind at all. When she finally reacts, it isn't calculated, it's instinct. Because trauma doesn't disappear, it waits. Whenever something goes wrong, everyone looks at 11. Not because she volunteered, but because she's capable. She becomes the solution to problems she never created. And every time she succeeds, the expectations grow. Be stronger, sacrifice more, endure more. She's praised for surviving things no child should ever face. And slowly, her worth becomes tied to her usefulness. By the time we reach chapter 5, something becomes very clear. 11 isn't just fighting monsters anymore, she's fighting her own past. The Nina project is presented as a way to help her, a chance to get her powers back, a chance to become herself again. But look closely at what actually means. To move forward, 11 is forced to relive her trauma, not gently, not at her own pace. She's placed back into the same environment that broke her in the first place: white rooms, strict rules, and adults deciding what's best for her without really asking. The message is subtle but unsettling. To be useful again, she has to reopen wounds she never had time to heal. She isn't recovering, she's being reconditioned. And the most heartbreaking part is how familiar this feels to her. She knows how to do this. She knows how to suppress fear. She knows how to perform under pressure. Chapter 5 quietly reminds us that Eleven's power has always come at a price. Every step towards strength pulls her further away from the life she was trying to build. And once again, she doesn't ask whether this is fair. She just asks herself whether she's strong enough to endure it. Because for 11, survival has never meant healing. It has always meant going back into the fire and hoping this time she won't burn as badly. The reason 11's story stays with us isn't the monsters or the superpowers, it's the familiarity. She represents children who grew up too fast, children who learned responsibility before safety, children who were needed more than they were protected, and yet, somehow, she doesn't become cruel. She keeps choosing empathy in a world that really showed her any. And that's why it truly sucks to be 11. Because her strength was never a gift, it was something she had to build just to survive. She didn't choose this life, she adapted to it. And that quiet resilience, the kind that forms under pressure, not praise, is what makes her story so powerful.